Good evening, everybody. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, take roll call.
Councilman Donovan,
Councilman Gary Donovan, Councilman at Large, present.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor,
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, Council at Large, here.
Councilman Ronald Quagliani,
Here.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky,
Here.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite, second district, present.
Councilwoman Sarah Acabali,
Councilwoman Sarah Akbarali, third district, present.
Councilman Mitchell Galagnano is absent, Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton,
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton, fifth district, present.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker,
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker, seventh district, present.
Councilman Victor Boris is absent, Councilman Robert Bruno,
Councilman Robert Burrow, ninth district, present.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Councilman Stephen Johnstone, 10th District, present.
and Chairman Peter Massaro.
Chairman Peter Massaro is present.
I'll read the call.
Yep.
West Haven City Council notice agenda of special meeting, June 21st, 2022, 6 p.m. In accordance with Rule Number 11 of the rules governing the actions of the City Council, Chairman Massaro has called a special meeting of the West Haven City Council to be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2022. The meeting will be held at the City of West Haven, 355 Main Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm going to turn this over to the chairman of the Finance, Councilwoman Bridget Hosky, about the MOA that has to be revamped. And I think, Lee, we want a little more explanation on that, please.
Is this me?
Yeah.
Oh, what am I asking him?
About
Oh.
the MOA,
So-
how are we going to go about things?
My apologies. I didn't realize he was turning it over
Oh.
to me, so I didn't mean to appear as if I was ignoring you standing
No,
there.
that's fine.
So my thought is that I'm just gonna bring it out to vote on it again, saying this will replace any prior resolutions and just read it as it was given to me last week. Because.
That's fine. I mean,
Oh, great,
the
thank
cleaner
you.
way is reconsideration, but that's fine.
Oh, I appreciate it. Okay, so we'll do that now. I'm looking for it. I'm just looking for it on my phone. I don't have it. Do you have it handy? No?
What?
The resolution. Can I do this now? Yep, we're on that. You wouldn't happen to have it, would you?
No, because I was under the understanding it was going a different way.
Oh, no worries. I'm just gonna look for it. Looking for Diane. Oh, Diane. Agenda. Sorry, I should have. Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I have the actual communication. We wanna, if you wanna just call it
Sure.
the communication and say that we're, rescinding the old and approving the original. And I have it here. It's communication M from the June 13th agenda.
Yeah, I don't have it with me.
And this is, here, I'll pass that down, but just, I don't have the actual contract though.
Oh, you want me to get a copy of the contract? Is that the problem?
I think that's what you might be looking for.
I got it.
Oh, good. You got it.
I found it. I knew I had something.
So can we just bring it,
That's a good contract.
Right, but this is the contract, you have the resolution.
Get the contract.
What day was that?
June 13th.
Oh, I think I found it. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Just bear with me one moment. What communication? It was M?
M.
Oh, yep, I'm excited. So, do I have to vote on it, or I'd like to make a motion to,
So what I think we need to do, and I might be wrong, but I think we need to either reconsider or rescind the old one because it was amended and approve the original one.
Well, my understanding, she didn't want, the chair of the finance committee didn't want to do that.
Wait,
So
I don't-
if I might, Madam Chair, all you have to do is make a motion to approve that contract and include in your motion that it supersedes any previous vote concerning that contract.
oh, so I don't have to read this? I'd like to make a motion to approve this contract that will supersede any
Previous contract.
previous
Previous.
contract.
Supersedes any previous resolution approved by the council concerning that contract.
What he said.
I understand the whole thing.
All agree.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who made the second, though?
I second it.
Okay. And we have an all in favor, right?
Okay.
Can we have a discussion
Oh, yes, we have a discussion.
So just to clarify, the resolution is the same, the MOU is the same that we originally received, except there is no amendment that was added last Monday, correct?
Correct. So this motion supersedes your previously approved motion.
Just wanna make sure we put it out there. Okay.
Yeah. Now we can do an all in favor?
Roll call vote?
Roll call vote. Councilman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman O'Connor?
Yes.
Councilman Quagliani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hosky?
Yes.
Councilwoman Garthwaite?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ackerbally?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilwoman Tucker?
Yes.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Johnstone?
Yes.
And Chairman Massaro?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Chairman.
What's that? Yeah, I'm probably just gonna do the minutes myself tonight.
Okay, council as a whole, we got a couple more items left in the ARPA committee that we want to finish up. Mr. Carney, you wanted to explain the last few communications? We got one here for the housing for the crisis, housing crisis.
Mr. Chairman, I also have an update on jobs in progress, if the council wishes to hear a quick update.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we spoke in the past about the need for housing for displaced families. What we're finding out at the end of COVID here is there's more and more need for housing for domestic violence situations. Right now in West Haven, if you need a place to live because you were burned out of your home, you are put in a hotel. If you are down on your luck and you need a temporary place to stay, there is no place for you to stay. If you are involved in a domestic violence incident and there's no place to go, you're more likely to stay in that situation than leave that situation. I've had the opportunity to work on these homeless shelters in other towns and cities, and the model that works the best is these homes are set up for families, a lot of them with children. It's a limited stay. It's run by a third-party organization that's funded by HUD or donations, and they're given an advocate to help them through their issues and find permanent housing after a 3-month stay. The max is like a 3-month stay. So we felt that having that type of facility in West Haven, where families could go and be safe, would be, not only a great service to the citizens of West Haven, but it could be done under ARPA funds. The plan would be to actually take a 3-family perhaps, or 2 3-families, or a building that the city owns, convert it with the money, and then hand it off to a third party to run. There would be no operating cost from the city at all.
Any questions? Gary?
Yeah, Ken, with that, thank you again for coming out. It's strictly for West Haven residents only, correct?
So
It's gonna be run
yeah.
by a third party, whichever that comes from, but it'll only be for West Haven residents?
So the answer is yes in this respect. If it's a non-domestic violence incident, it's only for West Haven residents. If it's a domestic violence incident, if we build the structure, then that person has a place to go from West Haven out of town for safety purposes. So it would still service West Haven, but in domestic violence situation, that person would not go to the West Haven facility, they'd go to the network that would be offered to them to be safer and be out of town. And this facility would give us that opportunity to do that. If it's a situation where there's a fire or there's, lack of funds, it would always be West Haven only. But for the safety of domestic violence victims, they want to move them out of town and not be in the community.
I mean, my only concern would be is that if, say, New Haven gets overwhelmed with a few fires and they have no place, that I'm not trying to cut
well,
out anybody, I mean, I
yeah.
feel bad for those families, it's just, I don't want our families here to not be able to have a place.
No, I don't think it works that way. We'd be very clear in the operating agreement, the city would still own the building.
Right.
And the agreement would be that this is for West Haven residents exclusively. The only difference would be if we have the facility and there's a domestic violence situation, that person would go to a network elsewhere, a house elsewhere, North Haven, Hamden, whatever,
Wherever,
to
right.
get out of town.
Right.
But it would serve the West Haven residents only.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Councilman Claiborne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Ken, I think the concept is good. We always want to try to help, our residents in need. I think before I could vote intelligently on this is that I would need to have some data, right? And determine, number one, there are resources already in place. Are those resources overwhelmed? And what are the numbers of the West Haven individuals that are displaced maybe per year for the last 3 years? I don't know if our existing resources and systems in place are working and are satisfactory or they're not at this point. So I think before I vote to make this type of investment, I think I would need that information.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any place for domestic violence victims to go in West Haven who live in West Haven. I don't think there's anything available.
No, I understand that, but I know that I know through this council that there is funding for these agencies that partner with us through CDA,
Sure.
through other grants. So we do contribute to having our residents being able to utilize these services. So I don't know, if there's an opportunity to enhance those services, and this makes sense. I'm happy to listen to that,
Sure.
but I just, I would need to kind of know where we're at now and if this could really help improve and, are we overwhelmed in our current system or not? So I would need that information to make sure I could, vote clearly
Sure.
on this.
My sense is those sort of funds may dry up because you wouldn't need them anymore, right? If you had a facility that was run by a third party, funded by an outside source, that was for West Haven residents only, the money you spend on hotels and things like that, you wouldn't need anymore.
It's one federal pot of money and another federal pot of money, right? So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to how do we better support our residents? And again, I don't know, I don't, anecdotally, I don't wanna vote on it anecdotally, this many people are displaced because of fire, or these many people are displaced because of domestic violence, and so, again, if we could get a handle, just like a lot of these other ones, right? You're gonna come back with additional information. For me, I think that I'd like to see that.
Okay.
Anyone else? No one?
I have a comment. I do agree with Ron. Because Beth becomes before the CDA, I know there's not a lot of people in crisis with fires every year. That could change. I know that.
Let's hope not.
And having been stalked twice, I know that having domestic violence people stay in the city where they were violated is just not a good idea.
Right.
So you would say, I know right now, there's an agency we use in the valley. So we would trade with other towns so that their people
Correct.
would be safe. So what kind of security would this building have? And would it be known that this is a safe house, or would they be able to keep it quiet?
Sure. My understanding is that there's very specific specifications, if you will, to build these structures, to protect the residents. Security is a big item. How they introduce it into the neighborhood, how they secure it, is well thought out, and that would be part of the RFP process when we put it out to bid. I'm just suggesting that if you look at any other town or city across the state our size, these facilities exist for a reason. We have the same problems everybody else has, and not having that facility for a town with 56,000 people in it, I think is an issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got one more thing. Ken, so it's $1 million request, so a three-family house is, whatever a three-family house is, and then
Sure.
to outfit it. But I guess my question is what happens after year 2? So there's gotta be a fee that the third-party entity charges the city in order to administer this program. So this is gonna be a reoccurring cost to the city after the ARPA funds run out. We're gonna have to handle this within our budget?
No, specifically, the last thing I want to do is introduce any project that puts pressure on a future budget, because I think that's when things fall apart. My understanding is that these facilities are funded, well-funded through donations, through HUD, through other federal funds, like you mentioned earlier. I don't see them being funded at all, ever, by the city. I also think that the home that's chosen would be something that the city was foreclosing on for taxes, and the city would take that house and remodel it and create the apartments. So, I may not need $1 million. That was just the estimate, but as you guys know, when I come back and give you updates, I'll be giving some money back in some categories and asking for money in other categories.
And is it typical that other cities, besides New Haven, right? Because New Haven's a much bigger city than we are, right? So, is it typical that the city would be owners of this, or would they just sub it out completely to a third party who comes and rents or buys a facility in town, and then, does Milford have any piece of that entity there? The city of Milford?
Milford, I've donated to that, they have the Rape Crisis Center down there. I
Right.
think they have a facility for that. But the barrier to opening these is the initial investment. That's the problem. If you give them the facility, and the facility is well done, it's secure, it's new, they find the money to run it. The barrier is getting the house, overcoming objections from the neighborhood, building this thing out. When the city's involved and owns the property, it's a whole different ballgame.
So if you could add to the list, I'd like to know if there are any other comparable cities that we benchmark against, similar-sized cities, Hamden, Middletown, Stratford maybe, that have such a, such a program where the city buys the house, and then a third party comes in. Doesn't mean that we can't be first. I think I would like to know.
I think what happens, I'll certainly research that for you, but I think what happens is the city happens to have a piece of property they can't do anything with, and these organizations approach the city, they raise money, they fix it up, the city owns the property, and the organization uses it. In this case, with ARPA money, we have a unique opportunity to get them to the point where the building is already remodeled, and it goes into instant use. I think that's the difference. What I'm seeing in other towns is a piece of property that nobody wants becomes one of these shelters through a lot of fundraising and work. I'm suggesting that with the ARPA money, you skip all that and you go right to a usable facility. But I'll do some more research for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman.
So, the idea is a three-family, you keep saying three-family, and, then you just brought up the neighborhood, and do the neighbors want the house and the
Sure.
facility there? So, it is my understanding that there is some thoughts or ideas about where we can locate this in the city. Like
Correct.
we have some ideas on houses we would want to purchase.
Yeah, and not purchase, but,
Well,
yeah, right,
foreclose on that we
Correct.
could use.
correct.
So if we revamp this three-family house, it would be just 3 units.
I'm giving you sort of a high-level view. I think we could do 5 or 6 units, and it may be 2, 3 families side by side. It may be a building.
A duplex
That-
on each.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
again,
know,
this is
I'm
just, it's just high level,
I guess I'm just thinking that I believe you were talking to, Councilman Quagliani when we were saying that we would have to use the other money we would be saving that other money. Because this would kind of run itself. And I guess I'm just thinking to myself, I don't know if that's necessarily true, Ken, because if it only houses 3 or 4 families, we have a structural fire that displaces 5, we need that funding. We still need that funding from CDA. I don't know how that could ever truly go away.
you may be right in that. I'm just suggesting that if you had 3, 4, 5, or 6 units available on a moment's notice that were clean and safe, it's a much better position than we're in now.
I just want to bring this up as well because it was interesting to me when we were saying, when people were talking about the domestic violence, because I wasn't sure that I knew what I was talking about, but then I realized I did. I didn't say it, I thought it in my head, is that generally when people who are victims of domestic violence, you get them out of the city in
That's what I
which
mentioned
is
earlier.
happening,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
So that's why I was kind of
Yeah.
odd what the sell was on the property, because I was like, I don't really think that's the case, but I wasn't sure. And I say this to just say that we're in this circle and we're in this family of organizations, or I'm not sure what we call it, but we could have somebody from New Britain, Hamden, Fairfield, all take up all those units and then be without a place. Like, we would share in that and then still need to house people at the fire, for
Yeah,
fire.
n-
So,
not if you wrote the operating agreement correctly, that's not true. I think what happens is you would dedicate 1 or 2 apartments to domestic
oh,
violence.
okay.
And then you would have a pass to send your residents to another town as a trade-off.
No, true.
Yeah, and the rest would be for, and I don't know if this thing's
So
gonna be.
I appreciate that, but I just wanna follow up on what you're saying. So, we could just say, well, these 2 we're always gonna leave open, they can't ever be touched. Is that frowned upon? I mean, is that really a good practice when you're in the business of protecting men and women and children who might be victims of domestic violence? Like, do you really do that? Like, is that a standard practice?
So I don't know it that well, but what I'm, the people that I spoke to did not frown on that
Okay,
concept.
I was just curious, that's all, because I wouldn't want to do something where people like,
Right,
are you really in the fight of, to prevent domestic violence when you
sure.
give us 10% of your housing? I was just curious,
If we
thank you.
if we produce a new structure, we will, several organizations will be interested in that, and we can write an operating agreement that services the citizens of West Haven. That's the key.
I appreciate that, thank you, I was just curious.
Yep.
Thank you, Chairman.
Set. Anyone else? We'll take a roll call vote on this?
We want more information.
More information.
We're holding
Or
it.
that's something we're holding?
So we're
Okay.
holding it. What held?
Hold it for more information, okay.
Okay. Tony?
Go ahead.
It has nothing to do with what we have before us, but it has to do with ARPA. Do you know what I'm about to ask you?
I don't, but go ahead.
Okay. So I know the camps, right? The money we allocated for camps.
I do know what you're gonna ask.
Well, we're gonna discuss this tonight. We don't have to do it now. I'm just curious.
This one here?
Yes.
Can we discuss this now, or do you
Yeah,
want to
because we
just?
got the,
Oh, no, we should do it.
the
Yep.
amendment here that's
I
gotta
have
be
it.
changed.
Yep.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, you wanna read it?
Thank you.
Do you want me to talk about it? Well,
Do you want me to read the amendment?
this is not my show, so.
You tell me, Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, read the amendment.
Okay, so it's my understanding that we're changing the title and
This is
calling,
excuse me,
Right.
this
This
is in
is-
regards to what?
this is.
Yeah, I
A-
know. We're not. That's what I'm saying. Don't we want to discuss it?
Yeah, it's A22,
A22.
right.
So, can I discuss it, Chairman? Can I talk about it?
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
So I spoke with Ken and I spoke with Neil Cavallero, who's the superintendent of schools. It is so late in the school year that they weren't able to create really any camps that would benefit or pay for camps to get students to apply. They've already gone home. What they did ask is that there's a substantial amount of children that would benefit from some type of youth employment, and asked if for this year, possibly next year, if they can couple it with offering camps at the school as well as giving children who come, who may be in need of employment opportunities to do work in and around the schools,
Summer Jobs Program.
summer jobs program.
So our second paragraph is the amendment we would like the council to consider to add to the resolution, and that will allow us to spend some of the $100,000 that was geared exclusively for camps. The concept, as Councilman Hosky just mentioned, is that we could actually put money in kids' pockets by doing work. They'd be supervised by Board of Ed personnel. They'd be cleaning up around the schools. They would be doing work, maybe moving furniture for guys to wax floors. That's been a successful program in the past. We think it builds character, it sends money out to the community, and we have the funds, if you agree, to do this immediately. And we think we can spend about $30,000 this summer if this is approved.
And I think, how many kids are there saying in the high school that they could employ? Is it like 30 or 40?
Yeah, 25 or 30, yeah. it's-
25 or 30
yeah.
kids who otherwise
Be sitting home,
would be sitting
playing video
home.
games, right?
So would this be for just, the high school kids or any West Haven kid?
Well, it'd be any West Haven kid, but typically it's a student in the high school because they're the age of working.
I mean, there's other
Yeah.
kids that go to other schools that aren't in the high school, in West Haven.
Oh, yeah, yeah, they could qualify, of course. Yeah,
Thank you.
there's no restrictions.
Okay.
Is it finished?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry, I don't.
How are you gonna get the word out, and how will they be able to fill out the applications? Is there a time limit?
My understanding is that the word has already been sent out. If these funds are approved, the kids will be hired immediately. They've already got kids lined up. The the word went around pretty fast.
So where is it being advertised?
I think what happened was, the schools, talked to teachers talked to students, a bunch of kids put their names in, and they're ready to go.
That kinda excludes the other kids that don't go to West Haven High, though, right?
No, I don't think it
How will
came,
they, how will they know? How will Platt, you know, those that go to even, schools in New Haven but live in West Haven?
Sure,
How
sure.
do we reach those kids?
I think that, I'll get you more specifics, but I think a lot of these kids, you know, they share the same sports camps, you know, they come to the school, they play sports. I think word is out there. I don't think they're all West Haven High students, but I'll find out for you.
So, I mean, can we put an ad in the paper, that weekly paper? Can we put an ad in that?
I'm
or
running out
can
of
we
donation space in that
Put it
paper,
on the
by the way.
website, or, you know, just.
I think the Board of Ed probably does a better job than anyone getting the word out, because they have direct lines to these kids. I can send you an email as early as tomorrow or Friday and or tomorrow or Thursday and let you know how those other kids are finding out. I'm confident that it's across the board. So,
If we approve this, will there be spots left tomorrow? You said these kids can be hired immediately. Well, is there still openings, or do you have all 40 kids picked out already?
they're telling me that they have enough work to hire double that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, one other thing, and how, you'll give information, so if I wanna tell my neighbor's children about it, they'll know where to go to
Correct.
apply.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think the one thing that, you're not mentioning, Ken, is that this is income-based, based on need, based on all these other, it's,
Correct.
yes. It's what the camp was supposed to kinda help, it's
Those same
kids, right, kids who are at risk and, you
Okay.
know,
I think a kid
Fun.
working is better than a kid going to camp, by the way. That's just my opinion. So,
a kid having something to do and not
Right.
finding something to do is,
I like work.
I'll send you an email tomorrow.
Thank you.
Do you wanna read that?
Sure. So it looks like we're changing the title to Camps/Summer Youth Employment Opportunities at the 100,000, and we're adding, funds will be used to create summer employment opportunities for high school age students who are West Haven residents whose families meet certain criteria such as income, free lunch status, or other proof. Final approval is subject to approval by either the City of West Haven or the West Haven Board of Education.
Correct.
And that will be an amendment to the original resolution. Sure.
Based on that.
Any more discussion? Take a roll call vote?
Councilman Donovan,
Yes.
Councilwoman O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Quagliani,
Yes.
Councilwoman Hosky,
yes.
Councilwoman Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilwoman Alcarbali.
Yes.
Now it's here, Councilwoman Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilwoman Tucker,
Yes.
Councilman Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Johnstone,
Yes.
and Chairman Massaro.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, who's next?
So these are the only two we have.
Well, let's do, how about
Say
820? We
420.
get rid of that first, do that one first, 820? Yeah, all right.
20 is the first responders
We're gonna
relief,
hold
so
that.
we only have,
We're gonna-
this is all I have left. 4 and 20,
All right,
Lefferts.
gonna hold
Holding this one? Yep, didn't say it.
it. A4,
Okay, so we're holding 20?
yeah, we're gonna use that money for A4. Yes, Ron.
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve A4 EMS premium pay of $960,000 for our 3 fire districts firefighters, the center of the West Shore and the Allentown Fire District. Discussion? So I made the motion, Mr. Chairman, because I can't think of a better use of ARPA funding than to give it to our first responders for the work that they did during the pandemic. And the first responders, the police, they were out there doing their job. I would argue that the firefighters were really the first line of defense. They were in people's homes when individuals were very sick, when there was no vaccine, on a regular basis. So when you didn't feel good, you called the fire department, and a lot of times they would come in and triage the individual because the hospital sometimes didn't even want them to go to the hospital. So I know firsthand, the firefighters, especially early on, the university housed those that were either needed to quarantine because they had a potential exposure, or they got COVID and were in isolation. And it was a very stressful time for all of them to be away from their family, to make sure that they didn't pass on the virus to their family. So the work that they did during that time to assist our community, again, in an unprecedented pandemic, is really what I think, the heart of this funding is. So to be able to offer this hazard pay to the firefighters for the work that they did during that time, I think is synonymous with what the intent of this ARPA money is for. So I'm very happy to not only make the motion, but support this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Congali. Anybody else got anything?
I'm having a little bit of trouble with this, specifically because, our teachers went to work, and they went to work double time. Some of our teachers, caught the virus. Some of our teachers, were pregnant and caught the virus. I feel like we haven't done anything for our teachers, so what are we gonna do for our teachers? Does anybody have?
I'm thinking that's something the Board of Ed, or am I incorrect? The Board of Ed,
ESSER
ARPA.
funds.
ARPA funds for the
ESSER.
board.
Doing it.
Huh?
They're not doing it.
ESSER funds.
They're
Yeah.
not doing it?
Yeah,
They're not doing anything. Well,
Right.
I just feel like that's totally unfair to the teachers, you know?
Yeah, listen, my
Do we
comment,
have-
oh, I'm sorry, so go
Do
ahead.
we have any say? I mean, can we do anything? But because they're Board of Ed, we can't do anything.
You're talking about the teachers, right?
Yes.
Well, they got their own ARPA money they had,
Yes, sir.
and they got quite a bit, and they could've used their part for part of that. Not to slide the teachers or anything, I mean, we're taking this as a city, as our first responders. The teachers did work, some teachers didn't work, some teachers were off, some teachers got caught in the ARPA, with the COVID. But it's my understanding they got what, 20 million?
21 million, I think, yeah.
So, I mean, they could use part of that money to take care of their teachers at the time, as far as I'm concerned. This 29 million was given to the city. The education part of it was given $21 million. They had it too. So,
How does anybody else feel? Does anybody else feel that that was wrong? That they're not getting anything?
I think that, I kinda agree with Chairman. I think that there was money that was funded to the Board of Education, and I feel that they were entitled to some of that money. And now we're taking care of this pot
Right,
for the rest of the city.
right,
That's just my personal opinion.
okay.
This is a tough topic for me.
Mhm.
I'm going in. I think there were so many people that provided the services that we all needed, as nurses that we needed, as teachers needed, as firefighters, as police needed. Somebody had to be at the grocery store, the cash register. Somebody had to drive the city bus. Somebody had to provide the gas at the gas station and pump the. So everybody that was working during that time was in a hazardous situation. Let's be clear. And we as nurses you as firefighters, you as police officers, were the safer of all of us. We were the ones that had the protection. We were the ones that were fully informed about what was going on. There were other people that were not as informed, that were not as protected. In my mind, those are the people that need the money. That's just my opinion. But we as a city have an opportunity to give it to our firefighters and our police, but I think that we should be advocating for our citizens who took the lump, you know, with all this going on. People that have lost their spouses and have lost their family members and have lost a whole lot more than us that are sitting around here that survived it. So that's my humble opinion, and I'm done. Rant over.
Thank you.
And I did it without tears.
Just might say one more thing, that this is also a one-time thing. It's a hazard pay. It's not like the police department received. It's altogether different. It's a one-time, during the time of COVID, when they responded to the calls, that they got this hazard pay. That's it.
Mr. Chairman, so the question I have is, at what point do we draw the line, right? Because we've been down this, as Councilman Quagliani says numerous times, do we go down this rabbit hole again? Some people are gonna call it a bonus, some are gonna call it a hazard pay, whatever you wanna call it. To Councilman Tucker's point, where do we draw the line? Because as much, believe me, with my family's history, I can't explain how much I appreciate the firemen in West Haven, how wonderful they are. However, and this is just my opinion, if you give to one, you've got to give to the rest of them, because you can't, in my opinion, you can't justify one more important than the other when you're dealing with the human life. And that's all I'm going to say on it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I wanna go back to where I started. I in no means, discounting what other individuals have done. I know firsthand, you know, I have somebody that went to school every day and worked in the school system. And, you know, whether it's a teacher or a para or a social worker or a custodian, and as, you know, Councilwoman Tucker said, there are many people that put their lives on the line, number one, because they had to go to work, right, you know, to make sure that they provided for the family. That said, we have an umbrella, right, of employees that we oversee. And the firefighters are one of those group of employees. Do I think that the nurses should get some type of stipend, and the teachers and the paras? And I do, but you know, that I believe is outside of our umbrella. You know, what is under our umbrella is public safety. You know, and I think again, firefighters were going into the homes with active COVID cases prior to there's any vaccine, or we even knew much about it, right? It was a very scary time. So do I think that these are unprecedented times, the pandemic? I do. Do I think other folks and other trades and other people deserve compensation for that? I do, but I think that they're outside of our umbrella. So that, to me, it doesn't mean that, okay, we shouldn't give those that are under our umbrella the opportunity, because we can't help everybody. So, I mean, I just want to make that clear. Everybody did a remarkable job through this, but, I mean, our responsibility, we have an umbrella that we oversee, and this is part of that umbrella. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I mean, I also agree with basically everybody. I mean, the fire department definitely deserves hazard pay. The teachers definitely deserve it. There's no doubt about it. But that was on the BOE. That was up to their responsibility to do that, in my opinion. I totally agree with you with the ones in the grocery stores and stuff. I don't know how we would, and if we had extra money left over in this, I would say let's give it to them, but how do we go about identifying them is probably the biggest problem. I have no problem giving them, I'm not saying 10,000 each, obviously, but even 500 or whatever it is, just to, but they all deserve it as well. But at this point anyways, I mean, I'm for this, giving them the 10,000 for the hazardous pay each, but. Yeah, no.
And I'm not saying that I don't think that the firefighters deserve it. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, no, I get that.
Okay, I just wanna be clear.
Oh, no,
But that's not what I'm saying.
I apologize if I was saying it in
No,
that manner.
I
No,
just
I
wanna-
agree with you with the clerks and, I mean, definitely the nurses too, but, and again, what Councilman Quagliani says, we only have so much.
Right.
But I would
Chairman.
love to do that extra, but.
Sorry, Gary.
Thanks.
I would
Yeah, I'm all
ask
set.
that we move on what we have in front of us this evening, which is the fire service, and we could always entertain what the Board of Ed did or what we could do for our teachers and whatnot. But tonight, we have in front of us the firehouse, fire department. They had to reinvent the wheel on how they were decontaminizing these crews and making the firehouses, outfit these firehouses. It was really hard to see, and a lot of firefighters came down with it, as a lot of other people did, and they were running skeleton shifts and mutual aid and whatnot. It was very hard. I would ask the council that we move on this. That's what's in front of us right now, and I have no problem to revisit what you're bringing up tonight. I think it's very important also, but I would like to ask for a roll call and move on this.
Are we still in discussion? We're still under discussion, right?
You all set?
Good.
So,
My thought is, so reading the actual ARPA application, so there's a piece of it that I don't understand or not necessarily agree with regarding gross 7.65% of gross premium pay for the share of payroll taxes. So I would like, I think, and if I have to amend the motion, I will, I'd like to advance this, but I think I would like to have a discussion with the finance director and see how they could implement this, how this is gonna be distributed. Because I'm not really sure about this 7.65%. I don't even know, my idea is that we're giving them the hazard stipend, the one-time hazard stipend. It doesn't compound in their salary. It's not part of their salary, but this other piece here about in addition to wages, this 7.65% of gross premium pay for employers' share of payroll taxes. I can't say I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'd rather just give them the stipend. I don't really know what that is, so I'd like to get some
Could I,
clarification on what that
can I
is.
make a remark about that?
Sure.
Firefighters, we get stipends in the department, and it goes on their payroll taxes. So they end up paying taxes on any stipends they get. So if this is considered a stipend, they're gonna end up paying taxes on it anyways. So it's not a freebie. So it's money they're gonna get on the bottom line at the end of the year that they're gonna have to claim. There's nothing in this country you get for free, and it's gotta be in their pay.
No, I understand the fixed rate stipend, but I don't understand the other piece of it, nor am I apt, I haven't seen that we didn't do that for the police, right? No, I don't think the finance director's here, right?
When did the chief know what?
Does anybody have an answer, chiefs? Do you guys have an answer to what that is?
Because I don't agree with it.
I had a conversation, thank you. I had a conversation that this was going to be a possibility, but stipends, depends on how it's classed, but my reading of the U.S. Treasury Department's definition on this is they do it on an hourly basis. So they also, but we're doing it a one-time thing, so if it's on an hourly basis, I believe that the Treasury Department anticipates and expects that taxes would be taken out of it as well. That's my understanding and my slant on it. Stipends, you're gonna need a payroll expert for that, but it's my understanding as well that stipends are part of your annual income.
Right.
And the king of all acronyms, the IRS, determines what everything is going to be about.
Well, and
So-
everything's taxable, right? If you got a
Everything's
longevity
taxable.
stipend, if you get a uniform stipend, whatever
Right.
you get, they take taxes
Right.
out of it. That's why I don't, again, I'm in favor of the hazard, pay based on the time that the firefighters worked during the pandemic, and there's a
Right.
specific time
Right.
in here, but I'm not really in favor of anything else. I mean, it's the stipend, and it's taxable, and that's how it goes.
Right, and I
It's just
think
like anybody else's, right?
They would have to be responsible on each individual who receives it, would have to claim it on their taxes. And that's what the understanding is. And to your point, and I think the question, if I may just take one quick second to help you all come up with an ease in making your decision. The question was put to us, there was a time frame between March of 20 and March of 21. And it's very important that everyone understands that time frame, because as it was already said, we were building this airplane while we were flying it, or building the runway as the planes were landing. And everybody that responded to this pandemic was at risk. And there are people that also said, well, why give it to the firefighters or the police officers or even the nurses? That's their job. We run into the fires when everyone runs away. But there's a reason why we can do that, because we're trained, equipped, and ready to do that. However, no one was ready for COVID. We had no idea. In fact, between those dates, there was no, and I repeat to you, and I have two of my colleagues here, there was no PPE to be had to wear on a constant basis to go in and face this pandemic. In fact, even the nurses, and I have two daughter-in-laws that work at Yale, they were taking their N95s and putting them in bags and with their name on it and sending them to be decon to be reused. That was the situation. So it's a hazard for those of us when you're not equipped, trained, or prepared to respond to this. And as you also adequately pointed out, Mr. Quagliani, is that we were in, when the hospitals wanted to keep the enrollment down or the beds down, the firefighters were going, making the assessment to stop them from going to the hospital. So if any of that helps any of you to make the right decision or the decision that you are comfortable with, I hope I was able to accomplish that.
Chief, don't go yet. So, I don't even know who had did anybody else? Who had the, I got a follow-up, but I'm not quite sure I had the floor to begin with.
You had the floor.
I can answer your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Chief, has there been any discussion with the city on that roster? And who those folks are and what the amount is and the logistics behind paying them, should this go through?
I can answer about 3/4 of that. There's been discussion amongst the 3 districts. Obviously, you all know how that's all broken out. I've had conversations with other members of the city government that those of us in administrative levels, I don't believe we're entitled to it. I wasn't going in like my firefighters were. Anyone that was on the rigs, and when we say the rigs, the fire trucks, the rescue trucks, actually going to the calls, are more deserving than anyone. And in my department, that was from the rank of captain down to firefighters. I have no lieutenants. So I have 20 on-duty staff that that would fit the description in the U.S. Treasury Department as actually doing the mitigating and the actual interventions of EMS. And even in our fire departments, and I have Chief Scaffarello here too to help back me up on that, our jobs transfer amongst each other. You may be assigned to the driving position on the rig that one particular day, but then you may come in on overtime to fill in for someone, and you won't, and you may actually be going in and doing the interventions. So in my estimation, that discussion was true first responders. I like to consider myself still a first responder, but the true first responders were the ones actually going in and doing the interventions.
I'll relinquish right now. I'll come back.
Just to follow up on that, Chief O'Brien and I could count on, from March 3rd of 2021 to March 3rd, 2022. His department, there was 31, West Shore Fire Department, there was 31 firefighters involved in COVID. In West Haven Fire Department, there was 48, and now in town, there was 17.
Be 2020 to 2021, not 2020.
No, that's my
2021 to
question.
2022, I'm sorry,
Can I, so,
March.
no, can I please? It's not,
Okay, whatever,
it's not
yeah.
what it is. That's
I'm
my
sorry.
question. Chairman, can I talk now,
Yes.
please? So that is my question. That is my biggest issue with this, is that it is talking 2021 to 2022. That is what this is about. And my problem, and what I think, that the firefighters from March 15th of 2020 to March 15th of 2021 should get $5,000. From March 16th to March 16th of 2021 to March 15th of 2022, those firefighters should get $5,000. I don't like the way this is written. I don't like that we're leaving out the first year that this pandemic hit and the work those individuals did. So that is my belief. That is why I believe that we should recognize both years, because next year we might be here again and you might be like, you know what, those guys are still out there.
And I think I did provide you the list from my department, as you requested.
You did, but looking at this, this is not speaking to that work. This is not, so we are having this argument, but we're not recognizing those men and women who went out there those first days and did not know what they were facing. A year later,
You're right.
I know.
You're right.
Can we amend this?
Can you
But
say
that-
those dates again, please?
I think that's a typo, though, because
Okay.
we've always discussed
Well-
2020 to 2021.
Well, if it's a typo or not,
I think so.
no, if it's a typo or not, my recommendation is that the firefighters, it is my belief and what I believe to be March 15th of 2020 is when all hell broke loose, is when we as a nation recognized this pandemic. I believe from March 15th to March 15th of 2020, March 15th of 2020 to March 15th of 2021, those firefighters on duty should get $5,000. Then from March 16th of 2021 to March 15th of 2022, those firefighters on duty, first responders, should get $5,000. So if you just got hired in the last year, you get $5,000. If you were here both years, you get $10,000. I don't know what that equates to, but I would like for us to look at that and decide. And I will take the opinion of, hi chief, of what you guys are thinking, but I look at this and that's why I'm sitting here like, I don't understand why that is. But I appreciate him telling me I'm right. I love hearing
You're
that.
right.
But, may I? The majority of them all worked them.
It doesn't matter if it's the majority or the minority. The start of the pandemic was March 15th of 2020. Those men and women went out there and they did what you said you're doing. This says, and it's still going on. So I think each year if we're going to do this, we should do this. And I will say for the record, whether or not the Board of Ed did what we thought they should do, and the umbrella, the teachers fall under under our umbrella. They are city employees, even though they're the Board of Ed. We fund the Board of Ed. We, because I asked, should have done better if we felt that we should have advocated for them. I'm not going to sit here and let anyone backpedal that. We should have advocated for them, because what the councilwoman is saying is true, and not the Board of Ed gets to do what the Board of Ed wants to do with the money. No, we as leaders in this town could have, done more than, that's just my opinion on the teachers. I hear what you're saying, and I should have advocated more than what I did, but I think also as, there's so many, as was said, there's so many other, it's hard to manage it. You know, it's really hard to manage.
Millie?
Chief, how many calls did you go out, COVID-related calls, would you say daily? Do you have that figure? Do you know that
Oh, it's
figure?
been ramping up and down. During those times that are significant, as Councilwoman Hosky already pointed out, the majority of the calls, the EMS related, I can give you generalities. In Allentown District, of the 2,700 calls a year, correct, Mike, roughly?
22, 23.
Right. 67% of those were EMS related, and during that time, at least 60% of those were COVID related. We have COVID through working with the health department. They give us a daily update of West Haven residents who have COVID. And when that comes in, ERS, the dispatch, puts out an alert. We know when we're responding to a COVID call. But we were dressing up, if you will, for the party, whether it was COVID related or not, because you don't know who had it, even like on a car accident and doing an intervention. Dealing with a victim in a car accident, didn't come in as a COVID call, but they could have had COVID, so we had to protect ourselves. So essentially, it was 100% of our EMS calls we had to treat like COVID.
And what was the number? I missed the number.
67, yes.
The volume.
17.
Actually, our call volume went down, but all of our other calls were COVID. It's probably over 80%. People were not calling us for the routine medical calls. They were calling us because they were sick with COVID, and that's what, over 80% of our calls were COVID.
So about 2,000 for us.
So we're currently still working on the COVID program.
Okay.
We still can't tell if it's a sick call. We can't tell if it's the flu, COVID. We're still operating under full PPE for our firefighters on every medical call we go on. Not to have the depletion that we went through before we knew it was happening. And before we can get the proper PPE. So right now, we're working under full COVID precautions. Every call we go on for a medical call is considered COVID. We just can't take the chance of having our staff depleted like we had in the past.
Okay.
The city of West Haven historically does 7,200 medical calls per year. And like the chiefs both said, we're probably operating between 75 and 80% during the height of COVID of the 7,200. So I can't do the math in my head that quickly, but a significant amount. And I think the chief brought up earlier, there was a time, several times, where the hospitals went on diversion. So they had a non-transport policy. So the fire department became the caregiver for that patient in their home. So if we went there 5 times because they couldn't breathe, they couldn't go to the hospital. They had no room for them. We were it. So we were exposed to that patient, not just the one time and sent them off to the hospital where the nurses had to deal with it. We became the caregivers for our community. So, you know, that's, I think, why we're advocating on behalf of our firefighters, where they had to step up and take on a role that we historically don't do. We became the community paramedic and provided care to everybody in our community with very little training, very little PPE. We had to put our mask in lunch bags and keep them in the firehouse. And then when you went on a call, you had to take that same mask that you were already used for 2 weeks and put it on again, because we just didn't have it. So I think the reason for their hazard pay is because we asked our firefighters to accept this hazard, and they did. And I know it's a difficult decision for all of you. You have quite a bit of groups. But I can tell you firsthand, these guys took on an exorbitant amount of risk. Think about being in the back of an ambulance with a COVID patient, and you're giving them a breathing treatment. So what that does is fills the ambulance up with mist. Okay, we try to put the medicine into your lungs to open everything up, and it causes an aerosol. And these guys are in it, and they stayed in it all the way to the hospital. They did what they had to do to protect people's lives at their own risk, with very little protection. And they did it every day, and they continue to do it every day, 7,200 times a year.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
One more question.
Sure.
Did we lose any firefighters to COVID?
Thankfully, no. We had some contracted the disease, and at some points, we, in all 3 districts, we were at staffing at half capacity. There were some firefighters are working triple and quadruple, but thankfully, no one expired from the disease. So I think that's a testament to my fellow chiefs and us developing the policies and the procedures and getting the supply chain up, and of course our own firefighters who have a protocol that they follow every day, and I think that's what helped keep us out of the ultimate sacrifice.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. So, let's go back up to where we started. So, my intention tonight was to take that $960,000 and add it to the ARPA plan, right? Because it's not part of the ARPA plan. It's not part of the mayor's approved plan. So now, once that, if we decide that that's something that this council wants to do, my expectation is that, just like we did with many other projects, the chiefs need to come back with us with a plan. What's the plan for distribution? Is it, as written? I would argue that it probably should be modified in some way, right? I would argue that, my thinking was that it was gonna be from March of 2020, going through, similar to what Councilwoman Hosky said, but my motion is to add $960,000 to the West Haven ARPA plan because it's not currently in it. And then the chiefs will come back to us with a plan that we could review, comment on, and decide if that's something we want to move forward on, similar to probably a half a dozen other projects that we've already done. We've approved in concept, but we want to see the plan before we actually appropriate the funding. So if I need to tweak my motion, it's that I like the council to approve $960,000 for this EMS premium pay to be included as part of the City of West Haven ARPA plan, and that the chiefs will come back to us with a plan on how a draft plan to us on how they feel it should be distributed. So, am I too wordy? So our approval tonight is not to all of a sudden next week there's gonna be checks issued to the firefighters. It's gonna be, let's add this money to the ARPA plan because it's not currently in there, and then we'll figure out the details from there. So that's the synopsis of my motion.
Second.
Okay, could we just take back the second and the first on the original motion?
I did the second, I'll
Yep.
take
No,
it
he
back.
did the second, and he
Yep.
made the motion, so, Councilman Bruno, you did the second on the original motion.
Take it back.
See what happens here.
Okay, so he took it back, and, Councilman Quagliani took his back.
So
Okay,
the
so now we
motion
have
is to
a-
add $960,000 to the ARPA plan.
and I have all the rest of the wording
Yeah.
for you. And I have the, second by Councilwoman Hosky.
Take a roll call, please.
Okay. Councilman Donovan,
Yes.
Councilwoman O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilman Quagliani.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hosky,
Yes.
Councilwoman Garthwaite,
Yes.
Councilwoman Acrobali,
Yes.
Councilwoman Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilman, Woman Tucker,
Yes.
Councilman Bruno,
Yes.
Councilman Johnstone,
No.
and, Chairman Massaro.
Yes.
Motion passes by the majority.
By the majority. Motion passes by the majority.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
Chief. I think that's it, right?
Are we gonna say we're holding number 20 or?
Is that it?
On the record, we're holding 20, right? Communication 20? We're holding. Yeah.
And,
Motion to,
so I have a.
So Pete, I got some updates for you, Pete.
Yeah, he's-
what?
I have some updates for you.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The broadband access for the library, just want to give you guys an update. So I met with the executive director, Colleen Bailey. They have 20 Wi-Fi units currently available district-wide. They're asking to use the funds for a statewide program called the Navigator Program. And what they do is they buy a laptop, they buy a Wi-Fi device, they bring the qualifying family in, they give them 3 classes, how to use the devices, and they give them the devices. The library then pays $40 a month for the Wi-Fi for 12 months. At the end of 12 months, the family keeps the equipment. That's how that works. And with the money that's available, that you've already approved, they can service 75 families. They're also telling me 1 in 4 in West Haven do not have Wi-Fi. Any questions on that one before I move on to the next one? Sure.
So, the laptop and the Wi-Fi piece go hand in hand. If either one of them are damaged, what happens?
They have insurance on those. I think there's a small insurance policy on them.
So we would replace the laptop or the device?
The insurance would.
To get back
Yeah.
to, so who pays for it though? Cause like you have phone insurance, but
Sure.
it's, still there's a cost to replace this phone. It's like, what, $125?
I don't think there's double dipping by the families into the fund. They get the laptop, they get the Wi.
No, and I'm
yeah.
not saying
Yeah.
that. What I'm just saying is that if the laptop, say, gets smashed because your
Sure.
daughter didn't properly put it in her pocketbook, and it,
You speaking from experience?
hypotheticals, and then you don't even know it's broke, but you're just paying for that over and over, and then one day you realize, wait, I was paying for this and it's been broke for how long?
Well, no, they would have the laptop at home. They would have the Wi-Fi device producing Wi-Fi. If they broke one of those devices, they wouldn't have the Wi-Fi or the laptop.
But we'd be paying the monthly fee. I'm just saying, like, if you didn't tell us, or you I guess I'm just
yeah.
curious as to if it broke, who's
If-
paying that?
Well, listen, I think what I saw was a very good program to qualify families in need. They vet them pretty well, and they put them through classes. And I think
Okay.
if they don't graduate the classes, they don't get the devices. That's my feeling.
Sounds good.
All right. Number 2, Food Bank Support Fund. We put an ad in The Voice last week. We're with the whole application in there. Half-page ad, so we're waiting to hear back on that. Children's Camp, we already discussed. Johnson Child Development Roof, Center roof. I have the architects designing the new roof now. The Johnson Senior Center, I'm meeting the architectural firm with the end users on June 30th at 4 o'clock to discuss how those funds will be spent. Child pedestrian safety sidewalks. We've started at Washington School. There's
Yes.
activity at Brown Street. And every location has been marked throughout the entire city. We have before and after pictures coming to you, and the contractor has maintained his price from last year. Okay? Municipal improvement building windows. We have chosen an architect, Hoffman and Associates, to start designing the windows. I'll get back to you on that.
We
And-
don't just go to Home Depot?
No.
Not for
The ARPA committee has approved the infrastructure paving funds to be the $2 million that you approved. We then approved it for it to go forward, so that money actually has been spent. And the last part is the Art Center. A lot of activity in the Art Center. Sat down, had a long discussion with Eleanor. spoke to State Representative Boer. It seems that a arts center with a community center within the arts center is the most desirable thing. And we have all agreed that writing an RFP and sending it out to bid for a large arts organization to come in and bid on it to alleviate the city of putting any operating funds into it is the best path forward. And that's what we'll be working on moving forward. So our hope is to have a large organization on board. There are actual, we found out, national organizations that come in. They take these buildings over, they dedicate it to the arts. They know how to find these people who need space. They network. Some space would be available to the community free of charge as a community center. And we would hope to have that partner on board before the building is even finished. That's where we're at.
So Ken, on the spreadsheet, so is there any update on aid to small business? Is there a draft application or program, or is that not you, or?
No, I'll deliver something to you. We don't have it yet, but we'll deliver something to you on that.
And you did give a list of potential flooding areas throughout the city, which is pretty much most of the city. So what's the next step in that process?
So that process requires a third party to come in, do an evaluation study, and identify the areas that will need to be targeted immediately. Target those areas that would not only alleviate flooding in those areas, but perhaps downstream, if you will. Not be part of a lot of the emotion and things that has grown over the years of flooding, but a really clean look at it from third party, and then we will start using funds to pay for that.
Have we received the second payment yet?
We have. Yes.
We have?
Yeah, that's
So
my
how much
understanding.
do we have?
At least 24 million that I'm aware of. And I think in July, we have the last 5 million coming, I'm told.
And so the spreadsheet online will be updated, right? You said we spent money already for paving and the additional revenue that came in, so that'll be reflective of that, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that spreadsheet, I think, will be taken over by the accounting firm, who will do a much nicer spreadsheet than what I'm doing. And my understanding is they're gonna be on board very soon.
And the 680 for public health outreach, what is it that you're?
So I'm gonna speak with the health department first. If they wanna start a program, we'll look at that. If not, we'll go to some of the existing third-party organizations that exist in West Haven and fund their programs. The only one is First Responder Family Relief Fund for $200,000. That's the only one that we haven't done anything with. And I do have another alternative to that if anybody wants to hear it.
Oh, I do.
I think you're gonna like this one. So it turns out, believe it or not, that we have here at the city of West Haven a rather old 25-year-old bandstand that is not self-leveling, that does not have a sound system, and cost thousands of dollars to set up and more thousands of dollars to rent sound systems to operate. So when you have the Savin Rock Festival, when you have bands, we actually spend a lot of money. Milford just brought to our attention that they have purchased a brand-new bandstand, which has the generator built into it. It has all of the sound system built into it. It is self-leveling. It takes very little to set up. And it would cost roughly $191,000.
And that, excuse me, that falls under ARPA?
Anything we do will be vetted by the architects and the accountants and the attorney. Nothing will be spent unless it falls under ARPA. According to Milford, it falls under ARPA, and they're pretty good over there. We believe it does fall under ARPA, but we will, if everything you approve, we get you a letter that says it's approved or not approved. Yeah, there's no danger of us spending money that doesn't fall under ARPA.
What's that, Councilman?
That's the exact same question I was gonna ask, so.
I got a question.
Read my mind.
Yeah, I get it. Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
asked one all night.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go back to it, because and I know it's really not on our agenda tonight, so I won't drag it out, but I'll try not to drag it out. And I don't even like, so the art center, phase one construction funding, $3.5 million. So, and I agree with all the other back half about third-party operation, the city's lousy landlord.
Right.
Right, we don't upkeep our stuff, and that, and on and on. So I understand that, and I agree with looking at a business plan. So $3.5 million, tell me, my understanding is the bones of the building were done, I don't know, a decade or so ago. You got a new roof, you got solar, I don't know if the mechanicals were done. It's just, what is that $3.5 million going to do? It seems like a lot of money to finish that building.
Yeah, it does until you go in there. So here's what we got. We got 15,000 square feet. We have a shell. We have not one wire, not one heating source, not one sprinkler, no elevator, zero. It's a shell. So you have to put an elevator in that services 3 floors, okay? That's $200,000 right there. You gotta bring a sprinkler system in off the street. Who knows if you need a fire pump? I don't know. You've gotta bring in a fire alarm system. You have to frame out all the rooms. You have to bring in gas lines. You have to build a kitchen. You've gotta do multiple bathrooms. You have to, offer finishes on 3 floors, including the basement. All the doors have to be replaced. There's landscaping that has to be done. We think the 3.5 million plus the 1.5 million from the state is enough to give us a completed building. $5 million, 15,000 square feet, 3 floors, and it has nothing right now.
If you had to build a 15,000 square foot building for that community purpose,
Sure.
what would it cost a square foot?
It's funny you ask that. We just put the lecture hall out to bid that did not have an elevator, okay, but it had seating for an auditorium. It had some high-end AV, not as this building will not have as high of AV. We came in $1,000 a square foot. Incredible, $1,000 a square foot. We think 5 million because the building's already built. The lecture hall was not built. We think we can do it for 5 million. That would be all your infrastructure, your elevator, your finishes, everything. Kitchen, all your FF&E. Don't forget, once you build it, you now have to populate it with furniture. You're gonna spend $600,000 on that.
Listen, I understand where we're at in the economy and the sourcing and the prices, and that's everywhere. We can't avoid that. We can't, it's just, I struggle. It's a lot of money on an existing building to refurbish when half of that could pave a lot of streets in this town, so.
Ron, on that point, I have been asked to get involved in this art center since 2005. I always said no. Okay? I didn't think it was a viable plan or project. Since then, with the introduction of the community center, I think that is hugely valuable to the town. And today, I went down to the Bridgeport Regional Economic Development Luncheon. They were honoring Paul Antonazzi from Antonazzi Associates, and the state was there, and their entire tourism push is based on the arts. If you go online and you look at their presentation, it's all about the arts. And at this luncheon, about 400 people, were a bunch of people who run these arts buildings, and I got a chance to talk to them. And these things are hugely successful all over the place. And it turns out at 305, I think it's Knowlton Road in Bridgeport, is one of those buildings. You go in there, we had this luncheon, okay? It was catered, and you had arts people all over the place. They were renting space, it was a community center, they had permanent residents, they had part-time residents. It was hugely successful, brought the whole neighborhood up. And I think that opportunity exists here if the right partner comes in and takes it over. And I think you get an extra bang out of it because you get a community center, which you desperately need. And you've already got $3 million locked into that building. To leave it vacant is a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep an open mind
Yeah.
until I see the business plan. It's just, it's a lot of money for one building.
It is.
I'm all set, thank you.
All set. Anybody else got any questions?
Well, are we going to go for the bandstand,
Go on.
the new stand with that? I know, are we discussing it? How do we do, what do we wanna do with that? Do we wanna? And I put it out to everybody, actually. I didn't know. Instead of this plan, because I wasn't for this.
It's not
820, I was not for that, for the relief fund.
I have to come back and
Um,
have a resolution.
But he was saying,
820's held.
yeah, well, it doesn't have to be held, we can just shoot it down and go for this, is what I'm saying, right?
No, I think I need more information.
No.
Yeah. Need more information. We don't have all the information.
Yeah, more, maybe you can come back with us with more information on that?
Yeah, I actually got the quote from Milford. It would have to go out to bid on our end. But again, if you look at what it takes to set up the current bandstand, it takes 4 Public Works employees. It takes a lot of time. We have to rent a sound system. The stage is not big enough, so what happens is if you have a big event, you can't even use the one we have. We have to go out and spend 10 grand on a stage for one night or 2 nights, and then rent the sound system. You know, this thing is big enough to do every event. It's got the generator built in. It's all waterproofed and for outdoors. It's got the sound system built into it, all the lights. It's really amazing. It's 36 feet long. You would save money buying this.
No, I agree, I've seen what they have to go through with that other one. So I guess, what do we just hold it, wait on it until we get more information back? Well, if he's got the specs and everything
I
at
do.
this point, I take this money and put it towards that. You
I
know?
don't know.
So, well, you're holding 820.
Plus, we're also holding the other one, 680,000.
Or we could just put
But
money
if-
aside. I
if-
mean, I'm not gonna, I mean.
What I'm saying, I want to say no to this 820, take that money and put it aside
That's what we're doing.
for
we're holding
this.
it. That's putting it aside.
But if we hold it, we gotta vote on it again.
No.
If we say no to this, we could take this money and put it in contingency until we get a plan, correct?
We're holding what's gonna be in contingency.
Okay.
It's sitting there anyways. We don't have to do anything. That's a.
Right.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know, if we hold this, do we have to bring this up again, is what I'm saying. I didn't wanna bring this up again. But,
So guys, you've got a mayor's plan in front of you. This would be one of the things that you would vote down, I would think. The money would automatically go into contingency, and then you could entertain another
I
project.
make a motion to deny A20.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody got a second?
that's what I was trying, right.
Well, I told you to make a motion. I
You
was.
said you seconded it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 820 is denied. All you have to do is make a motion.
No, you said you were holding it. You were holding.
Motion adjourned.
Did you have anything else, Ken? I think we want.
You done?
You want more information on the bandstand?
Yes.
Okay.
We would like more information, and I think just let me help you with presenting this in the way in which I know they want to know.
Sure.
That you should probably maybe come before us and let us know, like, how much does it actually cost for the Savin Rock Festival with, like, renting all that stuff for those several days? You might even, I know they do the same thing for the holiday.
Yep.
I'm not sure what other event might I be missing.
There's the bands on the green,
concerts.
the concerts.
Yeah.
There's also a whole charity end of it. So apparently what they're telling me is when charities want to raise money, like the Heart Association, it's not practical to use the one we have now. This would enable those charities to raise more money.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, like, when you come in and say, well, between the Savin Rock Festival, the holiday, the concerts, it costs
Sure.
$90,000 a year to do this, in 2 years, this new bandstand would be paid for. How does that work?
Yep. Got
Cause
it.
you wanna know that, right? Thank you, Ken.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate everything, I'm sorry, can I still talk? Oh, I appreciate you and all the work that your committee has done, if you can take that back to them.
I will, and I appreciate every one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
I need to see it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.